Hi, I'm Cynthia Rathunde. I'm joining you from Franklin Park, Illinois, which is right next to Chicago. I am a quilting enthusiast and Kimberbell addict. I have chosen for my block the Sweet Liberty Pillows watermelon block. So I chose this block because it involves a process similar to foundation paper piecing. And when I was a young girl, I sewed with my mom and my grandma and Girl Scouts. But when I went back to sewing as an adult and found a quilt shop, I signed up for a class on foundation paper piecing, and I loved it. So one of the things that was joyful was that I could create a project right then and there and see it come to life as I do step by step. And that's why I love how Kimberbell has done theirs. So this block, and like many others that Kimberbell does, they use the same process as foundation paper piecing, and it's all done in the hoop. So I get the joy of foundation paper piecing process, but I also get to combine it with embroidery in the hoop. And the way they have done this is outstanding. I am going to share my tips and tricks along the way for the watermelon block, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions and kind of figure things out along the way together. Yeah, so welcome to my tips and tricks on the watermelon block. Hi, it's Cindy again. So I wanted to talk to you about cutting. I know and Cristin have all talked about this. You need to do what's most comfortable for you. I work full-time. Sometimes I like to cut every bit of a Kimberbell project and put it in organizers so that I can just, when I get that hour in the evening to go down, I've got it ready. Other times, like this pillow, I'm going to cut what I need for that block, but I'm going to cut like all of that materials blocks. So as I go along, after I've cut a couple blocks worth, I pretty much have all my other pieces cut. I have tried the pockets like Cristin has. They're great if I'm working at home, but if I'm traveling, I found that with them being open at top, sometimes my stuff tosses and turns a little bit, and I just didn't feel comfortable, especially with using some out of print fabric. I was afraid I would lose it. And definitely do not write on these with the dry erase markers. I found after they stood for a while and they rubbed on one another, all my information rubbed off. So all that time I took to write everything I needed was gone. So use the piece of tape, tape an index card or something. I do find when I went to retreat, I found these. They're about the same size, but the same price on Amazon. They're real thin vinyl pockets, but most importantly, they have a zipper. And they do have a little pocket in the front that I can put a label on and put the information that I need. So I found that these were easier. I do love being able to just grab one and go with my project. So that's what I do about how I organize my cutting for a block. We're going to talk about cutting our watermelon block, which all the instructions are followed along on page 32 for our block. And at the very beginning, in pages, let's see, I believe it's 8 through 10, it actually shows you what fabric goes for what block. I have cut it according to that. I did take the backing and put the fusible backing on the back. I find that's incredible to keep away the puckers. I do find it difficult sometimes finding those 1/2-inch grids on my cutting mat. So what I like to do is the background pieces that need to be cut, I oftentimes use my Kimberbell Orange Pop ruler, because then I know it's exactly to the size I need, the pre-cut size. And then we'll use a smaller Orange Pop ruler to cut it to the final cutting size. Now, everybody asks, do we actually put fusible backing on some of these smaller watermelon pieces? I do, because I don't know if you can see that. Even though they're bright colors, they do bleed through. And that going through all that trouble to build your block and then standing back when it's done and seeing it bleeds through would bother me. So I am actually going to back these with fusible woven, but I wanted to go through the fabric. So this is your background blue plaid fabric. You're going to cut it 8.5 to 6.5. Piece 1 is the red with the writing, and it is 4.5 by 2. Piece 2 is this gorgeous silky solid that's in this pink. I love this. It is flamingo pink. It is It's not the actual name, but I call it flamingo pink. Piece 2 is 5 by 1.5. Piece 3 is this lovely little flower. It is 5 by 1. And on our rind, even the green, you can still see it bleed through. You may not be able to see it on my camera, but I can see it bleed through. You're going to cut the rind at 5.5 by 3. I'm going to go to my ironing board and I'm going to back the rest of those with fusible backing, and then I'm going to get started. Hi, I want to talk to you about one of my tips and tricks when we're doing basically I call it the flip and fold method. So this is in your hoop. You've got a piece of fabric and it's going to stitch a line. You're going to place the next piece right side down. So we're going to be looking at the wrong side. Okay, and then it's going to stitch again. All right, then what we're going to do is we're going to do something to this seam, and then you're going to finger press. One of the things I love is my Clover fabric folding pen. I would go down the stitching line. I would just run a bead right there. And then when I flip it over, it's got a little bit of press into it, like starch. When I press it with my finger, it's going to give me a really flat seam, which I like. And when you do foundation paper piecing, you realize that sometimes flipping that seam, getting this flat is really important. If you don't have a Clover fabric folding pen, you could use one of these rollers, okay? And you could do this, which helps you when you fold it over and you do this. It kind of helps you a little bit stronger than a finger press. You can also use one of these wooden presses along the edge, or you can just finger press. Basically, what you don't want to do is to be taking this on and off over to your ironing board, because what happens is there are some things that just can't do heat. So think about it this way. As Kim says, felt will melt. If you have felt on that block and you accidentally touch it while you're trying to fold one of these pieces over and iron it super crisp, you could ruin the felt or the glitter vinyl or the leather. So you always want to do like one of these methods or a finger press versus taking it over to your iron. I've also ironed a little vigorously on some projects, and while I'm over there at the iron, I'm ironing away trying to get this little itty bitty spot in my hoop to iron and not burn anything else around it. What has happened is I've pushed my project out of my hoop. So Cindy's tip, grab one of these cute notions and to help you with the flip and fold method. Thank you. So I wanted to share what kind of thread I'm using. I decided to go with the Red, White, and Bloom thread kits that I already had from Glide that I ordered for that project, which I haven't gotten to yet, but that's all right. So I'm going to be using white, standard black. The red I chose was Desire. The darker green, which is more olive based, is going to be Aloe. And then the more lime-based green in the instructions is going to be Avocado. So those are going to be my 5 base colors. I went through the directions. It doesn't say anything about changing the bobbin to a specific color, so I've gone with my Superior Threads bottom line white in that. If that changes, I'll let anybody know, but those are the colors to pull to get ready to start our watermelon block. So I wanted to talk real quickly today. I am using a Bernina 570 with an embroidery module. It's different than what Cristin uses, so I want to kind of show people how we're going to load this up. First of all, you're going to load light mesh stabilizer in your hoop, and then you're going to load your design. So I am not loading my design and the embroidery design in software. I'm just going to do it on my machine. So I'm going to go pull my design for quilting in. Lucky us for Berninas, I have the oval hoop. It is going to fit in the oval hoop. I do not need to worry about trying to go to my really large hoop or having issues. It automatically is going to place it in the center field of the embroidery hoop. We do not have a button that says add. We have the plus. This adds another layer. We go in, we grab the design we want, and if you look, it's placed it right on top of. So to begin, because we are using a clear blue tile or a blue quilting design, it does not have the batting tack down and the fabric tack down lines the same as the orange block by block method. So what I like to do is I like to find the center of my hoop and then center my piece of batting, and then I use my handy Kimberbell tape it down, and then I put the piece of background fabric on top of it, and I also tape it down before I start my blue clear blue tile quilting design. I did forget to add that I was using white to quilt because the plaid is so busy, in my opinion. I'm using the white just so it doesn't really stand out as much. You could use, I think, a light blue, even a off-white would look real pretty. I have gone and changed my thread to red. In the instructions to do the actual watermelon part, you don't need to worry about the color until we start to get to the satin and the finishing stitches, but I wanted to use the red so that I actually see it on top of the quilted line, so I know exactly where to put my pieces, because it's going to, this next step is going to actually stitch a template to show you where you're going to put the watermelon pieces 1, 2, and 3. So after we stitch the piecing template, the next step is to take fabric number 1, which is the one with the words on it, and completely center it over section 1. Section 1 is the bottom of the watermelon, and you just want to make sure it covers all of it, okay? And then what we're going to do is then place, or actually stitch a trimming and placement line. So once I make sure that it's all centered, we're going to stitch the next stitching trimming line. So after we trim, we're going to have our fabric as close to our stitching line as possible, right along here. And then we're going to take 2. Remember that beautiful silky solid, Cindy calls it flamingo. It is not flamingo, I believe it's grapefruit, but we're going to place it right sides together, so we're going to see the wrong side. I'm going to actually see my fusible stabilizer ironed on the back. If you do not, you're doing it wrong. So right sides together, you're going to line it up with the line that you cut, and you're going to go ahead and stitch this out. After you stitch the pink to that, you're going to have a stitch line. This is where it says to iron, finger press, or I'm going to use my clover pin. This is the best. I'm going to put a small bead right there before I flip my fabric. Then I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to finger press along that line. Okay, I'm going to stop the video because it's too hard to do with one hand, but you're going to finger press that down instead of ironing, or you could use that roller or the wooden stick. After we stitch the trimming placement line onto that pink, solid pink fabric, we trim real close to the edge, and then we're taking piece number 3, which is our beautiful little flowers, and we again right sides together, so right side down. I want to see that fusible stabilizer, and I'm going to line it up to that stitching line, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew that down. After I've stitched the seam down, before I flip the fabric, I'm going to use my clover folding fabric folding pin, do a real quick little bead, and then I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to run my finger along the line. Because that pen has a little bit of liquid in it, and I don't know if you can really see it, it is actually got a little bit of starch in it, which actually helps hold a really nice seam with that when you do finger press. We're prepping on step number 17, or stitch number 7, and it says stitch the rind placement line. If you notice in the instructions, that's the first time we see a color block for thread. I'm using the lighter of the glide threads in my machine, and it's called Avocado. And one of the reasons you're going to do this is because later it's only going to do a decorative stitch in part of the rind area, and if we use that red that I had used on these inside blocks, you'd see a little bit of red probably peep through the decorative stitch. Not big deal on a watermelon because the red kind of oozes into the green, but you want to get in the habit of making sure that you follow when Kimberbell tells you to actually put a color in, because there will be some designs you're not going to want to see a dark black through a white decorative stitch. So after doing steps 19 with the tack down of the rind and 20, you can see where I trimmed it real close. It makes like a big smile underneath the watermelon pieces. We are on step 21, or machine stitch 9. This is where we're going to start stitching the melon satin stitch and the splash designs. So this is going to be along the top, and we're going to have some little splashes of watermelon. It does say to change it to red, and remember I'm using the Glide color Desire for this portion. After we finish stitching the red up here, that's the satin stitch, we are going to want to change our thread back to that lighter, limier green, which again I'm using the Glide Avocado, and we're going to start stitching the decorative satin stitch for that. So go ahead and change your thread and then get started on step number 22. So we finished the inner rind decorative stitch, as you can see here, and it's after the red satin stitch. So we're going to do the outer rind. I did change my thread to the olive or the darker green, which is the Glide color Aloe. As we get ready to do the final stitch, which is machine stitch 12 or instruction number 24, we're going to stitch the seeds, and those are going to be black, so you want to make sure again you change your thread to black. And then after we get done, we're going to trim the jump stitches that are the stitches in between the seeds, and then we will remove it from the hoop, and we will final cut our block down to size. Hi everybody, we are in the home stretch. We are literally finishing up our last step. So we've removed the excess stabilizer from our block, and now it's time to do the last bit where we trim it down to the final size. Our final size is 4.5 inches tall by 6.5 inches wide or long. And we're going to use the orange pop rulers. Now, because this is a tiny holding area, I do like to take the next size up, and I like to nest them. So I just have a little bit more chunky area to hold on to when I cut. And then it just makes things a little bit easier. I don't feel like I'm right next to my fingers. I know Cristin likes to cut from the back. On this one, I'm going to cut from the front because I don't have the batting tack down lines, because this was a CBT blue design quilting and not an orange one. I'm going to do it visually and look at it. So one thing to keep in mind, if you are right-handed, you are going to start with your rotary cutter on the left side and then circle around. Cut, circle. So basically, you want to take the hand that you are on and make sure that the blade is between you and the orange pop ruler. So that way, as you're cutting, if you push in, you're pushing into the side of the ruler. Whereas if I start over here and I'm cutting and I kind of lose where I'm at, I'm going to maybe cut into my actual design. So that's why you go, if you're right-handed, you start from the left and you kind of push into the side. If you are left-handed, you would start at the right side, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and finish this cutting, and then I will come on to finish the rest of the video. So you're going to cut one side, you're going to rotate on my turning mat, cut another side, and keep going around until you have it all completed.